Hey YouTubers, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am the Tailorette, and today I'm going to talk about the one thing that is going to improve your sewing skills. I would say that any professional seamstress takes this advice and follows it. There are a lot of seamstresses, including myself, who have been in the sewing world for a very long time and have just wondered, why am I not getting past this slump? Why can't I go any further and my stuff look really amazing? Or actually have it turn out the way I want it to? The one thing that I have learned over the years and is pretty consistent every time I want to improve my sewing is the art of learning to teach yourself. Now, this video is not about how you need to fire your sewing teacher and stop having instruction from a friend. That's not what I'm saying. I am talking about the principle of having an inquisitive mind. When you are learning to sew, even from a teacher, you shouldn't fully rely on your teacher to hand feed you each step of the way. When you come home from a sewing lesson, you should go home inspired to try new things and experiment on your own and not feel like you have to have your teacher hand everything to you. However, I did not have a sewing teacher when I was learning to sew clothes. I did not have a teacher telling me how to do all these details. I was completely self-taught. Being a sewing teacher at one point in my life, I really realized how annoying it is to have students that don't want to think for themselves. They come to you for every step of the way and say, no, what next? And then they just pin it together and they go to the sewing machine and they don't even have this mind to come to me and say, okay, the next step is this what I do? Do I sew this? Okay, so then I can do this. Can I do it this way? They don't ask questions. It's just can you tell me what to do next? And a lot of it too, you have to own and be passionate about it yourself enough to look things up and figure them out, because you're not gonna have someone there for you all the time, 24/7, while you're sewing to figure things out. So you need to learn how to figure it out on your own. Plus, every sewing teacher is going to be limited. They have their own style, their own taste in color, and the different fit that they appreciate. And if you have a different mindset of a style that you're looking for, but your teacher has a hard time encouraging you in that, you need to have a mind of your own and go figure out, how do I create this look that I'm going for that my teacher actually doesn't appreciate? And she hasn't really looked into making things fit that way. So I'm gonna go figure it out on my own. Plus, if you teach yourself, you will far surpass your teacher if you do. You won't need sewing lessons after a while. It's just going to become this constant growing experience. And I have that experience too. I am constantly growing and learning. I haven't arrived. So now I'm going to get to, how do I teach myself how to sew when I don't know what I'm doing? How can you be your own teacher when you know zero information about whatever it is you're trying to learn? Well, as I just mentioned before, we have the internet, and you also have Google. You can type in anything, either on YouTube or Google. If you're looking at a dress that you want to make and you're like, I don't know how to do this certain neckline, or you don't know what a certain neckline is called, just start Googling neckline with slant or whatever it is that you're looking up. Just look it up and see a picture show up on Google image and go, oh, that's the neckline that I want. And then you see the title on it and go, oh, that's what that's called. Then you do that. You type that into Google and then you say how to make da-da-da-da-da neckline, how to make it look correct. Or maybe there's a specific zipper that you're like, I want that zipper, and you don't know what it's called. So you just Google look up different types of zippers to sew with. And there's usually a picture somewhere on Google Images of all the different zippers. And you can click on the one and go, ooh, that's the one I'm looking for, and see what it's labeled. And then Google from there, or YouTube it or whatever, and say how to install an invisible zipper if that's what you were trying to figure out. So there's ways to figure these things out. It's not like they're these random information that only people have in their head. It's actually out there on Google. Or nowadays, it's probably more on ChatGPT. Another way you can teach yourself is through sewing patterns. If you are a beginner sewist, sewing patterns have a lot. It's just good to experiment with them and all the markings, and they have all the explanation in the pattern on the piece of paper of what exactly you need to know about the markings on the pattern pieces. Or you just start I remember when I first started learning to sew, I just took out patterns. I didn't actually read the paper, but I just tried to figure out, okay, this notch must go with this one. And after using them so many times, I figured out that some of these markings are actually kind of a joke. So you can actually learn a lot about how patterns are shaped through using sewing patterns. You can just experiment with them. Try cutting out scrap fabric from the thrift store and trying to sewing them together, and you'll learn a ton of things by making mistakes. Now that's my next point. You'll also learn by making mistakes. You have to have that experience of trying sewing necklines together and figuring out, why do my necklines bubble? Or why is my waistband stretching out here? Then you can figure out and brainstorm, why is this not working? You either might go back to one of my other points and Google it, or you might have a bingo moment and try something else. So experience and actually getting your hands dirty in sewing will actually teach you a lot. There are some things you learn through experience, like actually handling fabric. There are certain materials that I just know when I start sewing with it, not to sew it in a certain direction or not to cut it on a certain direction, because many times before I've tried it and I've run into issues, but I wasn't able to find that on Google, and actually no teacher actually knew that except for me running into it, happening to run into it on a certain project. All right, guys. I'm taking a break and I'm actually eating some chocolate because I do believe that eating chocolate helps you learn. My next point is the other way that you can learn is by observing others. You may not necessarily be a teacher, but you can observe other people sewing. If you know another sewist, ask them questions. Where do you buy your fabric? How do you sew this? Do you use interfacing? Do you da-da-da-da-da-da? All these things that you're curious what you appreciate in their work if they actually do those things. Ask questions. Don't feel stupid by asking questions, because actually what leads to stupidity is if you don't ask questions. You won't learn anything if you don't ask questions. Just like if you don't ask questions to Google, you're not going to learn anything. If you meet someone who's had experience, they can offer you some tidbits of advice and you can store those in your brain. You can take it or leave it if you want to. But every time I meet a sewist, it doesn't matter what level they are, I just ask them how they do things, because everybody has a different way of doing things and you can learn something from everybody. It doesn't matter who they are as long as they're using a sewing machine. Now, of course, everyone probably has something that they're doing that's really stupid and we shouldn't be following that. So I'm not telling you to follow everyone's advice to the T, but just gather all the information you can from everybody and come with your own solution. Also, another one I'm going to mention, and this could be controversial, is I think social media is awesome. I have a social media dedicated to my sewing and dedicated to my art. So when I sign into my sewing Instagram, there's no personal stuff trickled in there. It's all sewing, and I can focus on just the world of sewing and get drenched in it. Just by observing the different posts that come up, you can say, oh, that design is inspiring. Or you'll see somebody sewing and they're not even giving a tip, but even just the way that they're sewing, you're like, huh, that's interesting. I don't know why I haven't done that. And you'll start doing it. So just really surrounding yourself with stuff related to sewing, just dive right into it. So if you are into sewing, I recommend being on Pinterest, Instagram, and what's the other one? YouTube. Okay. I recommend being on all those 3 platforms. I would say TikTok is optional. TikTok, I would say I haven't learned a ton of sewing from there. It's not necessarily the hub for sewing. It's more of a place where I promote myself rather than actually binge watch videos, because Instagram has a lot more wealth of seamstresses that are more my style, has so much more history of sewing that you can sift through than TikTok does. I'm telling you, every single professional has to do this. Every professional hits a conundrum in their project of what do I do? And they go and they figure it out. That's what makes them a professional, is the fact that they know how to teach themselves. And this applies to everything in your life. So my YouTube channel is geared in that direction of how to do things really well and how to have an inquisitive mind. So if you're interested in sewing and you want to have that out-of-box perspective, hit that subscribe button, because I'm a huge fan of just trying all kinds of different things. And I have a lot of exciting projects coming through. I have a denim project coming through, and I am making all of my summer dresses this year. So you won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button.